Hello everybody, welcome to this video. In today's video we're going to be talking about radicals. We're going to be multiplying them and we're going to be dividing with them today. Before we do that, there's just one thing I need to explain really quickly, and that is that a radical, that's the radical symbol. And the number that goes on the outside of the radical symbol, the little tiny one to the top left of weird little hook, that is called the index, and the number that's on the inside is called the radicand. In one of my previous videos, I called the radicand the number on the outside. I was wrong when I made that video, and I had a feeling, and then I looked it up the next day, and I saw that the number inside the radical is called the radicand. The number outside, that tells you what type of radical it is, a fourth root, a third root, a second root, a square root. That number is called the index of the radical. Now that we've seen that, let me just do a couple examples of this 1 through 12, like number 72. If we're going to solve something like number 12, which is the square root of 72, there's no two numbers. There is nothing that's like 10 times 10 to make 72. And because there is no perfect number that makes 72, we have to break the number 72 down into its factors and see, well, maybe we can get some partial simplification of this number. 72 comes from 8 times 9. 8 comes from 2 and 4. 4 breaks down into 2 times 2. 9 breaks down into 3 times 3. If we rewrite this, we have 2 cubed times 3 squared. It's 2 cubed because we had 3 of the number 2 that multiply, and we have 2 of the number 3 that multiply, so that's why it's 3 squared. Since we're doing a square root, we need 2 of a kind. That means if there are at least 2 of this variable, of this term, of this part, if there are at least 2 of this thing that I just circled, then you can take 2 of them and put them outside as a single 2. There was 3 2's here. That's 2 cubed. That's 3 of them. So I can just take 2 of those to the outside, and there are 2 of the number 3 there. So we can also take those outside of the root as a single number 3. We didn't take everything though. We only took 2 of those 2's, and that leaves a single 2 inside the radical. The last thing you have to do when you're simplifying these is multiply the things that are outside together, and if there is multiple things inside, you would multiply them together, but there is only the square root of 2 on the inside. So let me put that as my answer. The square root of 72 is 6 times the square root of 2. Let me show you how we can check that really quick. 6 times the square root of 2. If it took 2 of a kind to get something out of a square root, then if we wanted to multiply this 6 back inside, then what we could do is, instead of having a single 6 on the outside, we can convert it to be, we need the root, there's going to be the 2. We convert that single 6 that's multiplying on the outside, and since we have a square root, it is equivalent to 2 6's multiplying on the inside. Or you could say 6 squared on the inside. A 6 multiplying the outside of a square root is the same thing as having 6 squared inside of the square root. If I do 6 squared, that'll be 2 times 36, and 2 times 36 is 72, so we know that we factored it correctly. Normally, you do go from this version, like a number 5, you start with that, and you want to get to its factored form. But sometimes in higher maths, you will need to be able to take something that is factored and undo it back into its square root form. Let me go ahead and do number 5, just because I already circled it. square root of 25 x to the 5th power. We're doing a square root. So that means we need two of a kind. The number 25, that breaks down into 5 times 5. Or you could just already know that the square root of 25 is 5. So since 25 breaks down into a pair of numbers, since 25 can be written as a pair of numbers, that's 5 times 5, we can change this to look like 5 squared times x to the 5th power. Now that we see that we have two of the number 5, you can take those as a single 5 outside, and this x to the 5th power here, this number can be broken down. X to the 5th power is equal to, well, I already have an equal sign down here, so let me go down here. X to the 5th power is equal to x squared times x. Once we have a pair of x's, they both can be taken out as a single x. The one that doesn't have a pair has to stay inside the square root. Our last answer, the final step we have to do, is multiply these things that are outside and keep what's inside together. So our final answer is 5x squared times the square root of x. 5x squared times the square root of x. Okay, with that and with my previous video, you should be able to answer all 10 of these questions.